Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the communications center of Earth's main military base. The massive screens around her showed star maps and ship positions across human space. She had been waiting for 3 hours for a message from New Haven Colony. The agricultural world was supposed to send its weekly report, but nothing had come through. "Still no word from New Haven, Admiral," said Lieutenant Torres, his voice tight with worry. "Their last transmission was cut off mid-sentence 6 hours ago." Sarah felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. New Haven was one of humanity's most successful colonies. Over 2 million people lived there, growing food for dozens of other worlds. The planet had 3 major cities, orbital stations, and a small defense fleet. It was not the kind of place that just went silent. "What was their last message?" Sarah asked. Torres pulled up the audio file. Static filled the room, then a panicked voice broke through. "This is New Haven Control to Earth Command. We are under attack by unknown alien vessels. They are targeting our cities with—" The transmission ended in a burst of interference. Sarah closed her eyes. She had been in the military for 20 years and had never heard such fear in a colonist's voice. "Send a reconnaissance probe immediately. I want to know what happened to our people." The probe would take 3 weeks to reach New Haven. It was equipped with the fastest engines humanity had built, but space was vast. During those 3 weeks, Sarah tried to contact other colonies in the area. None of them had seen anything unusual. No alien ships, no distress signals, nothing. Earth's leaders called emergency meetings. The president, the military chiefs, and colony representatives all wanted answers. Sarah had none to give them. All she could do was wait and hope that somehow the people of New Haven were still alive. When the probe finally reached New Haven's solar system, the data it sent back made Sarah's blood run cold. Where the orbital stations should have been, there was only debris. Twisted metal and plastic floated in space like a graveyard. The probe's cameras showed the planet's surface, and Sarah had to sit down when she saw the images. The 3 major cities were gone. In their place were perfect circles of melted glass, each one 20 miles across. The forests and farmlands around the cities had been burned away. Rivers had been turned to steam. Even from space, the probe's sensors could detect that the atmosphere was filled with ash and radiation. "There are no life signs," Torres reported, his voice barely a whisper. "No human settlements, no communication signals. The planet is dead." Sarah studied the data for hours. The attack had been precise and thorough. Whoever did this had used weapons powerful enough to turn entire cities into glass. They had destroyed every human structure on the planet and in orbit. It was not a battle. It was extermination. The probe collected samples from the atmosphere and debris field. Back on Earth, scientists analyzed everything they could find. After 2 days of work, they had answers that made the situation even worse. The weapon signatures match technology used by the hegemony of Kethvar, Dr. Martinez explained to Sarah and the other military leaders. "They are a species from the outer rim, very aggressive, very territorial." Sarah had heard of the Kethvar. They controlled about 50 star systems and had been expanding their territory for decades. Human intelligence knew they were militaristic and considered other species inferior. But attacking a human colony was an act of war. "Why would they target New Haven?" asked General Thompson, the head of colonial defense. "It was just a farming world. No military value." Dr. Martinez pulled up a star map. "New Haven was in what?" "The Kethvar consider their sphere of influence. Our intelligence suggests they view human expansion as a threat to their dominance in that sector." Sarah felt anger building inside her chest. 2 million innocent people had been murdered because aliens saw them as a threat to their expansion plans. Farmers, teachers, children, all killed to send a message. "Do we know how many ships they used?" Sarah asked. "Based on the destruction pattern, approximately 1,000 vessels," Dr. Martinez replied. It was a significant force, but not their entire fleet. 1,000 ships to murder 2 million humans. Sarah had seen enough war to know that this was not just military action. This was genocide. The Kethvar had decided that humans did not deserve to exist in their territory, so they had wiped out everyone on New Haven as a warning. The probe continued to orbit the dead world, sending back more data. There were no survivors hiding in underground shelters, no escape pods that had made it to space. The Kethvar had been thorough in their extermination. They had even destroyed the orbital farms and research stations that posed no military threat. Sarah walked to her office after the briefing. On her desk was a picture from New Haven's last harvest festival. Smiling families posed in front of golden wheat fields. Children played in the background while their parents celebrated another successful growing season. Now those fields were radioactive ash and those families were molecular vapor. Her assistant knocked on the door. "Admiral, the President wants to see you immediately. Emergency session with the Defense Council." Sarah knew what was coming. Earth's leaders would want options for response. They would ask about military capabilities and strategic targets. The Kethvar had just declared war on humanity by destroying New Haven. Now Earth had to decide how to answer. As she walked to the meeting, Sarah thought about the people of New Haven. They had volunteered to leave Earth and build a new life, among the stars. They had turned an empty world into a garden that fed millions. They had been peaceful, productive, and happy. And aliens had murdered them all because they existed in the wrong place. The Kethvar thought they were sending a message about human expansion. They wanted to show that they could destroy any human world they chose. They probably expected Earth to retreat, to abandon colonies in their territory to avoid more attacks. They were about to learn that they had made a terrible mistake. Humans did not abandon their own. When someone attacked human civilians, Earth responded with everything it had. The Kethvar had killed 2 million innocent people. Earth was about to show them what justice looked like when delivered by an angry planet with the largest industrial base in the galaxy. Sarah reached the meeting room and took her seat. Around the table, she saw the same cold fury in every face that she felt in her own heart. The President looked at each person in turn. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to discuss our response to the genocide committed against New Haven Colony. Admiral Chen, I want your honest assessment of our military options." Sarah stood up and activated the holographic display. Star maps showed human territory, Kethvar space, and the location where New Haven had once been. She looked at each face around the table and spoke with quiet certainty. "Mr. President, the Kethvar used 1,000 ships to destroy New Haven. They think they have sent us a message about their military strength." She paused and let her words sink in. "I recommend we send them a reply they will never forget." The war was about to begin. The Iron Consensus, the emergency session, lasted 18 hours. In that time, something unprecedented happened in human politics. The Terran Defense Council, which normally spent months arguing about budget allocations and territorial disputes, reached complete agreement in less than a day. Admiral Sarah Chen watched as representatives from every human nation and colony spoke. The delegate from Mars stood first, his red uniform reflecting the lights of the council chamber. "The Mars Defense Force places all our ships at Earth's disposal. Every vessel, every crew member, every weapon we have built. The Jupiter Federation." Representative stood next. "Our industrial shipyards will work around the clock. We can build more ships than any species in the galaxy has ever seen." One by one, every human government made the same pledge. The outer colonies, who usually complained about Earth's policies, offered their patrol fleets without reservation. The asteroid miners, who rarely got involved in politics, promised to convert their cargo ships into supply vessels. Even the independent traders and mercenary groups volunteered their services. President Martinez had called it the Iron Consensus. For the first time in human history, Every branch of humanity was united behind a single goal. The Kethvar had given them something that centuries of politics had failed to achieve: complete unity. "Admiral Chen," the president said, "you will have supreme command of all human military forces. Your mission is simple: make the Kethvar pay for what they did to New Haven." Sarah accepted the position with a heavy heart. She understood what the president was really asking. This was not just about military strategy or territorial defense. This was about showing the galaxy that humans protected their own, no matter the cost. Within hours of the council meeting, ships began moving toward Earth. The planet's orbital space filled with vessels of every size and type. Massive dreadnoughts from the core worlds arrived alongside small frigates from frontier colonies. Transport ships brought supplies, ammunition, and fuel from across human space. The logistics were staggering. 700,000 ships needed coordination, supply lines, and battle plans. Sarah established her command center on Luna Base, where the massive computers could handle the data flow from such an enormous fleet. Her staff worked in shifts around the clock, organizing humanity's greatest military undertaking. The shipyards worked at maximum capacity. Earth's moon-based factories churned out new vessels every day. Mars contributed its famous heavy cruisers, built in the low gravity of the red planet's shipyards. Jupiter's gas mining platforms provided fuel for the fleet, while the asteroid belts supplied raw materials for weapons and armor. Other species watched humanity's mobilization with growing alarm. The Centauri Republic sent diplomatic messages urging restraint. The Arcturian Trade Alliance offered to mediate between humans and the Kethvar. Even the mysterious vegan collective, who rarely communicated with other species, sent warnings about the dangers of galactic warfare. Sarah read each message and filed them away. She appreciated the concern of humanity's allies, but this was not a matter for diplomacy. The Kethvar had committed genocide. They had murdered 2 million innocent people without warning or negotiation. The time for talking had ended when New Haven cities turned to glass. The fleet assembly took 6 months. During that time, intelligence reports came in about Kethvar movements. They were reinforcing their border systems and calling in ships from across their empire. Apparently, they had not expected such a massive human response to their attack on New Haven. "They think we are bluffing," reported Commander Kim from the Intelligence Division. "Kethvar communications intercepts suggest they believe humans are too weak and divided to mount a serious military campaign." Sarah smiled grimly. The Kethvar were about to learn how wrong they were. Human beings might argue about politics and trade disputes, but they never hesitated when their people were threatened. The aliens had killed human children. Now they would face the consequences. The Iron Fleet, as it came to be called, was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 700,000 ships formed battle groups across dozens of star systems. Each group was larger than most species' entire military forces. The largest battle group, led by Sarah herself, contained 50,000 ships, including Earth's most powerful dreadnoughts. Sarah stood on the bridge of the EDF Retribution, humanity's newest and most advanced warship. Through the viewports, she could see hundreds of other vessels in formation. Their hulls gleamed with fresh armor plating and their weapons arrays bristled with destructive power. Each ship carried crews who had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not return home. "Admiral, we are receiving final crew reports from all battle groups," announced Captain Williams, Sarah's second-in-command. 700,000 ships, 15 million crew members, all ready for combat operations. 15 million humans had volunteered to avenge New Haven. They came from every world, every background, every profession. Former merchants commanded converted cargo ships loaded with missiles. Mining engineers operated vessels designed to crack asteroids but perfectly capable of cracking alien warships. Military academy graduates served alongside grizzled veterans who had fought pirates in the outer systems. The diversity of the fleet was its greatest strength. Unlike the standardized forces most species used, the Iron Fleet combined dozens of different ship designs and tactical approaches. Some battle groups specialized in long-range bombardment. Others focused on fast attack runs or defensive operations. The Kethvar would face an enemy that could adapt to any situation. Sarah received the final intelligence briefing before departure. The Kethvar Empire controlled 57 star systems with a total population of approximately 30 billion. Their military consisted of roughly 100,000 ships, most of them smaller than human vessels but equipped with the powerful weapons that had destroyed New Haven. "They are consolidating their forces," reported the intelligence officer. "It appears they plan to defend their core systems and abandon their outer territories if necessary." That suited Sarah perfectly. She did not want to chase Kethvar ships across the galaxy. She wanted to find them, defeat them completely, and make sure they never again considered attacking human civilians. The departure ceremony was broadcast across human space. Representatives from every world spoke about New Haven and the people who had died there. A moment of silence was observed for the victims, followed by readings of their names. It took 3 hours to read every name, and Sarah listened to each. 1. Maria Santos, age 7, who had wanted to be a teacher. Dr. Robert Kim, who had developed new farming techniques that fed millions. The Morrison family, who had just celebrated their first successful harvest on their new farm. 2 million names, 2 million lives cut short by alien hatred. As the ceremony ended, Sarah gave the order that would begin humanity's largest military campaign. "All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. Set course for Kethvar territory. We have people to remember and justice to deliver." The hyperspace engines of 700,000 ships charged simultaneously. Space itself seemed to bend around the massive fleet as they prepared to jump across the galaxy. Other species watching the departure would later describe it as terrifying and beautiful, like watching a force of nature given purpose and direction. Sarah thought about the Kethvar leadership, probably confident in their military strength and secure in their fortified worlds. They had attacked what they saw as a weak human farming colony, expecting no serious response. They had calculated that humanity would retreat rather than risk galactic warfare. They were about to discover that they had miscalculated everything about human nature. The species that had turned dead worlds into gardens would now turn their industrial might toward war. The people who had built cities in the depths of space would bring that same determination to destroying those who threatened their children. The hyperspace jump began, and 700,000 ships disappeared into the void between stars. The Iron Fleet was going to war, carrying with it the combined fury of an entire species. The Kethvar had wanted to send humanity a message about power and territory. Earth was about to deliver a reply written in fire and steel that would echo across the galaxy for generations. The Long Hunt. The first Kethvar system fell in 4 hours. Admiral Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the Retribution as her forces surrounded the outer world of Kelthak. 50,000 human ships emerged from hyperspace simultaneously, their weapons trained on the planet's orbital defenses. The Kethvar commander obviously expected a negotiation. His transmission came through within minutes, translated by the ship's computers. "Human fleet, you are violating hegemony space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Sarah's response was broadcast to every ship in both fleets. "This is Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You have one opportunity to surrender unconditionally. Any hostile action will result in the complete elimination of your forces." The alien commander's reply came back filled with what the translators identified as laughter. "Foolish humans, you face the might of the Kethvar hegemony. We will destroy you as we destroyed your pathetic colony." That was the wrong thing to say. Sarah gave the order, and 20,000 human ships opened fire simultaneously. The Kethvar defense fleet, numbering roughly 800 vessels, lasted exactly 11 minutes. Their ships were well designed and their crews fought bravely, but they faced overwhelming firepower from every direction. The orbital defense platforms around Kelthak fell next. Massive structures that had taken decades to build were reduced to expanding clouds of debris in minutes. The humans used precise, overwhelming force that left no room for resistance or escape. When the shooting stopped, Sarah opened a channel to the planet's surface. People of Kelthak, your military forces have been defeated. You will not be harmed if you do not resist. We are here to end your government's ability to commit genocide, not to harm civilians. The planet surrendered. Without further fighting, Sarah left a small garrison force and moved the main fleet to the next system. This became the pattern for humanity's advance through Kethvar space. Arrive in overwhelming numbers, demand surrender, and destroy any resistance completely. The second system took 3 hours. The third took 6 hours, but only because the Kethvar had fortified it more heavily. By the end of the first month, 12 Kethvar systems had fallen to human forces. Each victory was broadcast throughout the galaxy, showing other species what happened when someone murdered human civilians. The Kethvar military tried different strategies. They attempted ambushes in deep space, using their knowledge of local space routes to surprise human battle groups. The ambushes failed because humans brought so many ships that losing a few hundred vessels barely affected their combat capability. They tried hit-and-run attacks on human supply lines. This strategy also failed because Earth had prepared for a long campaign. Supply convoys were protected by battle groups larger than most species' entire fleets. When Kethvar raiders attacked a convoy of ammunition ships, they found themselves facing 5,000 human warships instead of the few dozen escorts they expected. The Kethvar leadership sent increasingly desperate messages to other galactic powers, asking for military assistance or diplomatic intervention. Most species politely declined to get involved. A few tried to mediate, but Sarah's response was always the same. Unconditional surrender was the only acceptable outcome. They killed our children, she told the Centauri ambassador during one attempted negotiation. They turned our cities to glass and laughed about it. There will be no compromise with genocidal killers. 3 months into the campaign, the Iron Fleet had conquered half of Kethvar space. The human advance was methodical and unstoppable. Each system was surrounded, isolated, and given one chance to surrender. Most Kethvar commanders chose to fight, confident in their military training and advanced weapons. They learned that superior numbers could overcome any tactical advantage. Human ships might be individually weaker than Kethvar vessels, but when 100 human ships attacked one alien vessel, the outcome was never in doubt. Human crews were well-trained and determined, fighting with the memory of New Haven to drive them forward. Commander Torres, now serving as Sarah's intelligence chief, reported on Kethvar morale. Their communications are becoming increasingly panicked. They are pulling ships from their outer territories to defend their core systems. This suited Sarah's strategy perfectly. She wanted the Kethvar to concentrate their forces. It would make the final battle more decisive and prevent scattered remnants from continuing to threaten human colonies later. The Iron Fleet adapted its tactics as the campaign progressed. Some battle groups specialized in siege warfare, slowly grinding down heavily fortified systems. Others focused on rapid strikes against lightly defended worlds. The most mobile groups hunted down fleeing Kethvar ships, ensuring that no significant enemy forces escaped to cause trouble later. Human industrial capacity proved decisive in sustaining the campaign. Earth's shipyards replaced losses faster than the Kethvar could inflict them. Ammunition factories worked around the clock to keep the fleet supplied. Medical ships evacuated wounded crew members and returned them to fighting condition within weeks. The Kethvar tried to match human industrial output, but their economy was based on conquest rather than production. They had taken what they needed from conquered worlds, rather than building their own manufacturing base. When human forces cut their supply lines and captured their shipyards, Kethvar production collapsed. By the fourth month, captured Kethvar officers were talking freely about their empire's situation. The translation computers revealed growing desperation in their military communications. Units were reporting equipment failures they could not repair and ammunition shortages that could not be resupplied. Sarah felt no sympathy for their predicament. These were the same forces that had killed every human being on New Haven without warning or mercy. If they were running out of ammunition, they should have thought about that before committing genocide. The campaign reached a turning point when the Iron Fleet captured the major industrial world of Kethros. The planet's shipyards had produced a significant portion of the Kethvar fleet, and its fall crippled their ability to replace losses. More importantly, the planet's databanks contained complete intelligence on Kethvar military deployments and strategic plans. They are consolidating everything at their homeworld, Torres reported after analyzing the captured data. Every remaining ship, every defense platform, every weapon they have left. They are planning to make their final stand at Kethvar Prime. Sarah studied the tactical displays showing the enemy's last stronghold. Kethvar Prime was heavily fortified with orbital weapons platforms, defensive fleets, and planetary shields. The Kethvar had spent centuries building it into an impregnable fortress. Under normal circumstances, attacking such a position would cost an enormous number of ships and lives, but these were not normal circumstances. Sarah commanded 700,000 ships against an enemy that now had fewer than 20,000 functional vessels. The Kethvar had built their fortress to withstand conventional attacks. They had not planned for an assault by the largest military force in galactic history. The final preparations took 2 weeks. Sarah assembled her most powerful battle groups for the assault on Kethvar Prime. 200,000 ships would participate in the attack, while the remaining forces secured conquered territory and prevented any chance of Kethvar reinforcement. As the fleet prepared for hyperspace jump to the enemy homeworld, Sarah addressed her forces one final time. Her message was broadcast to every ship in the Iron Fleet, reaching the millions of humans who had spent months fighting to avenge New Haven. We are about to finish what the Kethvar started when they murdered our people. They chose genocide as their weapon. We choose justice as ours. Remember New Haven. Remember why we are here. Let every species in the galaxy know that humanity protects its own. The hyperspace engines charged, and 200,000 ships prepared to deliver the final blow to the Kethvar Empire. The long hunt through alien space was almost over. Soon, the species that had laughed while burning human children alive would face the full consequences of their actions. Sarah thought about the families on New Haven who would never see this day. They deserved to witness the justice being delivered in their names. The best she could do was ensure that their deaths had meaning, that their sacrifice would prevent other human children from suffering the same fate. The jump began, and the largest battle fleet in galactic history disappeared into hyperspace, carrying with it the promise of final justice for the dead of New Haven Colony. The Kethvar homeworld. 200,000 human ships emerged from hyperspace around Kethvar Prime like a swarm of angry metal insects. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the tactical displays as her fleet took positions around the alien homeworld. The planet hung before them, a blue-green sphere surrounded by layers of defensive platforms and patrol ships. The Kethvar had spent their entire history building their homeworld into a fortress. Massive orbital weapons platforms circled the planet in 3 defensive rings. Energy shields protected the platforms from long-range attack. Defense fleets patrolled between the rings, ready to intercept any attacking force. It was an impressive sight, the kind of defensive system that had protected Kethvar Prime for centuries. Under normal circumstances, it would have been nearly impossible to assault. But the circumstances were far from normal. Enemy fleet composition? Sarah asked. Captain Williams. Approximately 18,000 ships of various classes, Williams replied, studying the sensor data. Their orbital defenses include over 3,000 weapons platforms. Planetary shields are active around all major population centers. Sarah nodded. The Kethvar had gathered every ship they had left for this final battle. Their entire remaining military force was concentrated around their homeworld. It was exactly what she had hoped for. One decisive engagement that would end their ability to threaten human colonies. The first communication from the planet came within minutes. The voice belonged to someone who identified himself as Supreme. Commander Velthak, leader of all Kethvar forces. Human Admiral, you have won several battles against our outer systems. But now you face the true power of the hegemony. Withdraw your forces, and we may consider allowing some of your ships to escape destruction. Sarah activated the fleet-wide communication system. Her response would be heard by every human and Kethvar in the system. Supreme Commander Velthak, I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. 4 months ago, your forces destroyed New Haven Colony and murdered 2 million innocent humans. We are here to ensure that such an atrocity never happens again. There was a pause before Velthak replied. When he did, his voice carried the same arrogant tone that had marked Kethvar communications throughout the war. New Haven was a military necessity. Your species was expanding into our territory. We simply removed the threat before it could grow larger. Sarah felt her anger rise, but kept her voice calm. You murdered children in their schools and families in their homes. You turned entire cities to glass without warning. That was not military action, it was genocide. Your opinion is irrelevant, Velthak responded. You face the combined might of our empire. 18,000 ships and 3,000 orbital platforms await your attack. How many of your people will you sacrifice for your foolish quest for revenge? Sarah looked around the bridge at her officers. She saw the same cold determination in their faces that she felt in her own heart. These were people who had spent months fighting their way through Kethvar space, witnessing the evidence of alien cruelty on every world they liberated. Supreme Commander, you seem to have miscounted our fleet, Sarah said. We are not here with a few hundred ships hoping to win through superior tactics. We brought 200,000 warships to your homeworld. We are not here to fight your 18,000 ships. We are here to eliminate them. The communication channel went silent. Sarah could imagine the shock on the alien bridge as they processed what she had said. 200,000 ships was 10 times larger than their entire defending force. The Kethvar had never faced such overwhelming odds. Begin the attack, Sarah ordered. All battle groups commence bombardment of outer defensive ring. The space around Kethvar Prime lit up with weapons fire. 50,000 human ships opened fire simultaneously on the orbital platforms defending the planet's outer perimeter. The energy output was so massive that it temporarily overloaded several sensor systems. The Kethvar platforms returned fire, their powerful weapons cutting through human ships like knives through paper. But for every human vessel destroyed, 100 more continued the attack. The platforms had been designed to defeat attacking fleets of a few thousand ships, not a force that darkened the entire star system. The first defensive ring fell in 30 minutes. The massive platforms that had protected Kethvar Prime for generations were reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The Kethvar defense fleet tried to intervene, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. 18,000 ships could not fight 200,000 and hope to survive. Supreme Commander Velthak opened communications again as his outer defenses crumbled. Admiral Chen, perhaps we can reach an understanding. The hegemony is prepared to discuss terms for ending this conflict. Sarah's response was immediate. The time for negotiations ended when you turned our children into ash. Surrender unconditionally or be destroyed. We are a proud people, Velthak replied. We will not bow to human demands. Then you will die for your pride, Sarah said, and ordered the attack to continue. The second defensive ring lasted an hour. The Kethvar had concentrated their most powerful weapons there, and the platforms fought with desperate courage. Human losses mounted into the thousands as alien beams tore through ship after ship, but the outcome was never in doubt. Superior. Numbers overcame every tactical advantage. As the second ring fell, something unexpected happened. Individual Kethvar ships began breaking formation and fleeing the battle. They were not retreating in an organized fashion. They were simply running in panic as they realized the hopelessness of their situation. "Should we pursue the fleeing ships?" asked Captain Williams. Sarah considered the question. Part of her wanted to hunt down every Kethvar vessel and destroy them all. But she had a larger purpose here. "Let them go. Our goal is to end their ability to threaten human colonies, not to exterminate their entire species." The final defensive ring put up the strongest resistance. These platforms were built into the planet's orbital infrastructure and could not easily retreat. Their crews knew they were fighting for their homeworld and gave everything they had. It was not enough. 20,000 human ships concentrated their fire on each platform, overwhelming their shields and armor through sheer firepower. The weapons that had destroyed New Haven were turned to scrap metal by human determination and superior numbers. As the last orbital platform exploded, Kethvar Prime lay defenseless before the human fleet. The planetary shields still protected the major cities, but they were designed to stop bombardment from space, not invasion from the ground. Supreme Commander Veltak made one final transmission. His voice had lost its arrogant tone and now carried, "Only desperation. Admiral Chen, we surrender. The hegemony formally surrenders to human forces. Please, spare our civilians." Sarah looked at the defenseless planet below her fleet. She could order an orbital bombardment that would turn every Kethvar city to glass, just as they had done to New Haven. It would be perfect revenge, justice measured, in equal destruction. But that was not who humans were. The people of New Haven had been farmers and teachers and children. They had built schools and hospitals, not weapons platforms and military bases. Humans fought to protect the innocent, not to murder them. "Supreme Commander Veltak, your surrender is accepted," Sarah announced. "All Kethvar military forces will lay down their weapons immediately. Your government is dissolved as of this moment. Kethvar Prime is now under human administration." She switched to the fleet communication system. "All forces, prepare for ground assault. We will occupy every military installation and government facility on the planet. Civilian areas are not to be targeted. Anyone who harms non-combatants will answer to me personally." The landing began within hours. Human ships filled the skies over Kethvar Prime as assault transports descended toward military targets. The Kethvar military, seeing the massive force arrayed against them, surrendered without significant resistance. Sarah herself landed with the first wave, choosing to accept the surrender of the Kethvar leadership in person. She stood in the ruins of their military command center, surrounded by alien officers who had spent months fighting against her forces. Supreme Commander Veltak was a tall creature with gray skin and large eyes that seemed to hold centuries of military pride. When he offered his weapon in surrender, Sarah could see that it was the most difficult moment of his life. "You have defeated us completely," he said through the translator. "We expected you to be weak, divided, easily intimidated. We were wrong about everything." Sarah took his weapon but did not feel triumphant. Too many people had died for this moment to bring any satisfaction. "You were wrong about human nature, Commander. We do not start wars, but we finish them." The occupation of Kethvar Prime took 3 days. Human forces secured every military installation, government building, and weapons facility on the planet. The Kethvar civilian population watched in amazement as human soldiers distributed food and medical supplies instead of weapons and destruction. As Sarah stood in the former hegemony capital, looking out at the alien city that was now under human control, she thought about New Haven. The people there would never see this day. never know that their deaths had been avenged. But their sacrifice had ensured that no other human children would suffer the same fate. The New Galactic Order. 6 months after the fall of Kethvar Prime, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the ruins of New Haven's main city. The glass crater stretched for miles in every direction, a permanent scar on the planet's surface. Radiation levels had dropped enough for humans to visit safely, but the land would never again support the farms and homes that had once thrived there. The memorial they built was simple but powerful. 2 million names were carved into black stone, pillars arranged in a perfect circle around the crater's edge. At the center, a single flame burned eternally, fed by geothermal energy from deep beneath the planet's surface. It would burn forever, a reminder of the price of genocide and the determination of those who came after. Sarah walked slowly along the memorial wall, reading names she remembered from the evacuation lists. Families who had volunteered to build a new world among the stars, children who would never grow up, teachers who would never see another classroom, all victims of alien hatred and military pride. The Kethvar Empire no longer existed. After the surrender at their homeworld, human administrators had systematically dismantled every aspect of their government and military. The process had been thorough but surprisingly merciful. Unlike the Kethvar treatment of New Haven, humans had made sure that civilian populations were protected and cared for. The former Kethvar worlds were now organized into the Human Protection Zone, administered directly by Earth's colonial government. The alien populations were relocated to a dozen carefully selected planets where they could rebuild their society under strict supervision. They would be watched for generations, but they would be allowed to live. It was the right decision, said Captain Williams, who had joined Sarah for the memorial dedication. Showing mercy to their civilians proves that we are better than they were. Sarah nodded, though part of her still wondered if complete destruction might have been more appropriate. The Kethvar had shown no mercy to New Haven. Why should humans be more generous to those who had committed genocide? But she knew the answer. Humans were better than the Kethvar because they chose to be better. The people of New Haven had been peaceful, productive, and kind. Honoring their memory meant acting with the same values they had lived by, even toward their killers. The memorial ceremony was attended by representatives from across human space and beyond. Every human world sent delegations to remember the dead and witness the promise that such an atrocity would never be allowed to happen again. Several alien species also attended, their ambassadors laying flowers at the memorial walls. The Centauri Republic's ambassador spoke for many when she addressed the gathering. Today, we remember not only the victims of New Haven, but the lesson their deaths taught the galaxy. Humanity has shown that it possesses both the power to wage devastating war and the wisdom to show mercy in victory. The campaign against the Kethvar had changed everything about humanity's position in galactic politics. Before New Haven, humans were seen as a young species, rapidly expanding but not particularly threatening to established powers. After the Iron Fleet's demonstration of overwhelming military force, every alien government suddenly wanted better relations with Earth. Trade agreements that had been stalled for years were suddenly approved within weeks. Territorial disputes that had dragged on for decades were resolved in humanity's favor. Species that had never acknowledged human claims to star systems now formally recognized Earth's sovereignty over vast regions of space. Sarah found the change both satisfying and disturbing. It was good that humans were finally being treated with respect, but troubling that respect came only through fear. She had hoped that other species would value human friendship for its own sake, not because they were afraid of human warships. Chatu. Numbers told the story of humanity's new status. The Iron Fleet had lost approximately 15,000 ships during the campaign, less than 3% of the force that had set out to avenge New Haven. Earth's shipyards had already replaced those losses and built thousands more vessels. The industrial capacity that had sustained the war effort continued to produce new ships even in peacetime. Other species looked at those numbers and realized what they meant. Humanity could field the largest military force in galactic history, without straining their economy or depleting their reserves. The ships that had conquered the Kethvar Empire were just a fraction of what Earth could build if truly threatened. The former Kethvar territories presented both opportunities and challenges for human administration. Many of the conquered worlds had valuable resources or strategic locations, but they also had alien populations that needed to be integrated peacefully into human space. Sarah had been appointed as the first governor of the Protection Zone, responsible for managing this complex transition. The work was difficult but rewarding. Human engineers rebuilt the infrastructure that had been damaged during the war. Human doctors provided medical care to alien populations who had been neglected by their former government. Human teachers established schools where young Kethvar could learn about peaceful coexistence instead of military conquest. Not all the former Kethvar accepted their new situation gracefully. Small groups of military holdouts continued to launch guerrilla attacks against human installations. A few extremist factions talked about rebuilding their empire and reclaiming their former glory. But these groups found little support among civilian populations who were experiencing peace and prosperity for the first time in generations. The galaxy's major powers watched humanity's administration of the conquered territory with great interest. The Arcturian Trade Alliance had expected humans to exploit the former Kethvar worlds for their resources and labor. Instead, they saw infrastructure improvements and civilian welfare programs. The Vegan Collective had predicted harsh oppression of the conquered populations. Instead, they witnessed education initiatives and cultural preservation efforts. Sarah understood that humanity was being tested. Every decision about the former Kethvar territories would be scrutinized by other species, who were trying to understand what kind of galactic power Earth intended to become. The choices made now would determine humanity's reputation for centuries to come. The test came when a group of young Kethvar rebels attacked a human medical facility, killing 12 staff members who had been providing free health care to alien children. The rebels claimed they were fighting for their people's freedom and demanded that humans leave their traditional territory. Some human politicians called for massive retaliation. The rebels had murdered innocent people who were trying to help, their former enemies. Military officers suggested that harsh punishment was necessary to prevent further attacks. Sarah made a different choice. She ordered the rebels captured alive and put on trial in civilian courts. They were convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment, but they were allowed to speak in their own defense and represented by competent lawyers. Their families were not punished or harassed. The trial was broadcast throughout the galaxy. Other species watched as humans applied their justice system fairly even to those who had killed their people. It was a powerful demonstration that Earth's legal principles applied equally to all, regardless of species or political affiliation. The memorial service concluded with the lighting of the eternal flame. Sarah placed the torch into the central brazier, and fire bloomed against the darkening sky. Around the crater's edge, 2 million names caught the flickering light, ensuring that the dead of New Haven would never be forgotten. As the crowd dispersed, Sarah remained at the memorial with a small group of survivors. These were people who had been off-world when New Haven was attacked, or who had emigrated to other colonies before the destruction. They were the living remnants of a community that had been wiped from existence. "Do you think we did the right thing?" asked Dr. Elizabeth Santos, whose daughter Maria had been among the youngest victims. "Showing mercy to the people who killed our children?" Sarah considered the question carefully. It was one she had asked herself many times during the long months of occupation and reconstruction. "I think the people of New Haven would have wanted us to be better than their killers," she replied. "They built their colony to show the galaxy what humanity could achieve through peace and cooperation." If we had responded to genocide with genocide, we would have dishonored their memory. Dr. Santos nodded slowly. Maria always said she wanted to help people from other worlds learn to grow food like we did. Maybe helping the Kethavar rebuild is a way of continuing her work. As Sarah left the memorial, she thought about the future of human space. The Iron Fleet had dispersed back to their home systems, but the message they had sent would resonate for generations. Humanity would protect its people with overwhelming force when necessary, but it would also show mercy to defeated enemies and justice to all who lived under its protection. The galaxy had learned that humans were not a species to be trifled with, but more importantly, it had learned that humans were a species that could be trusted with power. The tears shed over New Haven's graves had watered the seeds of a new galactic order, one where genocide would find no refuge and justice would be delivered by those strong enough to enforce it. The grand hall of the Galactic Council Station buzzed with the voices of 100 different species. Translators hummed softly in the background, turning alien words into understanding. Crystal beings from the Vega system clinked like wind chimes when they moved. The fish-like Aquarians spoke in bubbling tones through their water-filled breathing masks. Giant insect creatures clicked their mandibles in what passed for laughter among their kind. Ambassador Zekthul of the Kethmoran Empire stood at the center of a growing crowd. His scaled green skin gleamed under the station's artificial lights. Sharp teeth flashed as he spoke, and his yellow eyes held the cold intelligence that had made his species feared across the galaxy for over 1,000 years. "You worry too much about these border pirates," Zekthul said to a nervous Centauri delegate. His voice carried the authority of someone whose words could order the destruction of entire worlds. "My people have dealt with vermin before. We know how to clean house." The Centauri delegate, a tall blue humanoid with 4 arms, shifted uncomfortably. "But the attacks have been getting bolder. Our merchant ships report strange vessels that appear from nowhere and disappear just as quickly. Our sensors can't even track them properly." Zekthul laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Ghosts and shadows, nothing more. You know what we did the last time pests became a problem? 847 years ago, there was a species called humans, soft pink things, weak and pathetic. They thought they could spread their disease across our territory." Several aliens leaned closer. The humans were legend now, a cautionary tale told in the darker corners of space. Most species believed they were just a myth. "We found their little colony world," Zekthul continued, his eyes gleaming with old pride. "New Eden," they called it. 12 million of the creatures building their ugly cities and breeding like insects. They thought distance would protect them. They thought the galaxy would care about their fate. A Rigelian observer, its crystalline body pulsing with nervous light, spoke up. Surely the council intervened. "The laws of war." "Laws?" Zekthul's laughter cut through the hall like a blade. "What laws apply to pest control? We burned their world clean. Every city, every farm, every last breathing human. It took 3 days. They screamed for help, broadcast pleas across every frequency they knew. They begged someone, anyone, to come to their aid." The hall had grown quiet now. Even the constant background chatter of the translator system seemed muted. "And do you know what happened?" Zekthul asked, looking around the circle of faces. "Nothing. The great galactic council debated. The mighty civilizations of the galaxy held meetings. They wrote strongly worded letters of concern, and while they talked, we finished our work." An Andromedan delegate, its gaseous form held together by a containment suit, shifted nervously. "But surely their homeworld responded? Their fleet?" "What fleet?" Zekthul spread his clawed hands. "They had 3 worlds and maybe a dozen ships between them. After New Eden burned, we never heard from them again. Dead, all of them. Extinct. The galaxy is cleaner for it." In the shadows near the back of the hall, A figure in the simple brown robes of a merchant observer watched and listened. Captain. Sarah Chen kept her breathing steady and her face neutral, though her hands clenched into fists inside her sleeves. The universal translator in her ear rendered every word of Zekthul's boasting into perfect English. She had heard this story before, of course. Every human had. It was carved into stone on Earth, written in the genetic memory of her species. But hearing it told as a joke, as entertainment for a crowd of aliens who nodded and laughed at appropriate moments, made her stomach burn with acid. "The lesson," Zekthul said, his voice carrying clearly across the now silent hall, "is that the strong do what they must, and the weak suffer what they will. These new pirates you fear? When they become too troublesome, we will deal with them as we dealt with the humans. Completely." Sarah's thumb moved carefully to the recording device hidden in her sleeve. Every word, every gesture, every laugh from the crowd was being captured in perfect detail. This would be transmitted back to Earth within the hour, added to the vast archive of evidence that had been growing for 8 centuries. The crowd began to disperse as Zekthul moved on to other topics. Trade agreements, territorial disputes, the usual business of galactic politics. Sarah remained in her corner, watching the Kethmaran ambassador hold court like a king among subjects. An Altarian merchant approached her, its tentacles waving in what passed for friendly greeting among its kind. "Fascinating stories, yes? The old ambassador knows much history." Sarah nodded politely. "History has a way of repeating itself," she said carefully. "Indeed, though some say the humans were not truly extinct, legends speak of their homeworld, hidden somewhere in the outer rim. But legends are just stories for children, yes?" "Yes," Sarah agreed. "Just stories." The Altarian moved away, but Sarah caught something in its manner. A careful watching, a testing of her reaction. How many others suspected? How many had begun to notice the patterns? For 8 centuries, humanity had been very careful. Their traders moved quietly through the galaxy, never staying long in one place, never drawing attention to themselves. They listened, learned, and mapped. Every Kethmaran world, every ship design, every military installation had been catalogued and studied. Sarah touched the communication device hidden beneath her merchant's robes. A single pulse of data, compressed and encrypted, shot out toward a hidden relay station. From there, it would bounce through a dozen systems before reaching Earth. Another piece of intelligence added to the vast puzzle humanity had been assembling for longer than most species kept records. As she watched Zekthul continue his social rounds, greeting old allies and making new deals, Sarah felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. 847 years of preparation were nearly complete. The children of New Eden had grown up, learned patience, and become something the galaxy had never seen before. Zekthul had made one crucial mistake in his boasting. He assumed that silence meant death. He believed that the lack of human ships in known space meant extinction. He could not imagine a species that would spend 8 centuries planning, learning, and preparing for a single moment of justice. Sarah pulled her hood up and moved toward the exit. Her work here was done. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn what humanity had become in their long exile. They would discover that some wounds never heal and some debts can only be paid in full. The great station continued its slow rotation around the neutron star at the galaxy's heart. Aliens continued their business, making deals and forming alliances, unaware that they were being watched by eyes that remembered everything and forgave nothing. In the depths of space, hidden ships received Sarah's transmission and added it to their databases. Across the galaxy, humans in disguise gathered the final pieces of information they needed. The time for watching was almost over. The time for justice was about to begin. Earth looked different than it had 800 years ago. Where once green continents had sprawled beneath blue skies, now massive cities stretched from pole to pole. The oceans still existed, but they were covered by floating platforms that held billions of people. The sky was filled with ships moving in careful patterns, like blood cells flowing through arteries. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the observation deck of Luna Station, looking down at the world his ancestors had died to protect. His great-great-grandmother had been on New Eden when the Keth-Moran ships arrived. She had been 7 years old, playing in the gardens when the first bombs fell. She had watched her parents die, had hidden in the ruins for 3 days before. The rescue ships found her. She had been one of only 30,000 survivors pulled from the burning world before it became uninhabitable. Those survivors had carried their stories back to Earth like seeds of rage that would grow for centuries. "Sir?" Captain Rodriguez approached from behind, her footsteps soft on the metal deck. "The final fleet reports are ready for your review." Marcus turned away from Earth. Rodriguez was young, barely 30, but her family had been preparing for this day just as long as his. Her grandfather had helped design the quantum stealth systems that would make their ships invisible to enemy sensors. Her father had worked on the gravitational weapons that could crush a battleship without firing a single energy blast. "How many ships do we have ready?" Marcus asked. 12,000. 418 combat vessels, another 8,000. Support ships, 6 million trained crew members. Rodriguez spoke the numbers like a prayer she had memorized. "Every major shipyard in the system has been running at full capacity for the last 50 years. Marcus nodded. For 8 centuries, humanity had lived with one purpose. Every scientific breakthrough, every technological advance, every decision made by their government had been focused on this single goal. They had turned their entire species into a weapon designed to answer one specific threat. And the intelligence reports from our observers?" Rodriguez handed him a data pad. "Complete tactical information on 47 Keth-Moran worlds. Ship movements, defense patterns, communication protocols. Captain Chen's report from the Council Station confirmed our final target priorities." Marcus scrolled through the information. Detailed maps of every Keth-Moran military installation, schedules of ship patrols, names and locations of every important leader. The humans had spent centuries learning everything there was to know about their enemy. "What about the other species?" Marcus asked. "The ones who watched New Eden burn?" "Full files on all of them, sir. The Centauri who refused to send aid because it would hurt their trade agreements. The Rigelians who abstained from every council vote about intervention. The Andromedans who actually increased their business with the Keth-Moran after the genocide." Marcus felt the familiar cold anger settle in his chest. The Keth-Moran had pulled the trigger, but the rest of the galaxy had loaded the gun by doing nothing. They had all made the same calculation. Human lives were worth less than their own comfort and profit. "Sir, there's something else," Rodriguez said carefully. "We've detected increased Keth-Moran patrol activity near the Outer Rim. They may be getting suspicious about the pirate attacks." Marcus smiled without humor. The pirate attacks had been humanity's way of testing their new technology while gathering final intelligence. Quick strikes against isolated ships, always leaving no survivors and no evidence. The aliens thought they were dealing with ordinary raiders. They had no idea they were being studied like lab specimens. "Let them increase their patrols," Marcus said. "In 3 days it won't matter." He walked to the command center, Rodriguez following behind. The vast room was filled with hundreds of technicians working at holographic displays. Each one was coordinating a different aspect of humanity's plan. Supply lines, communication networks, weapon systems, all working together like parts of a vast machine. General Harrison looked up from a tactical display as Marcus approached. She was old enough to remember the first refugees from New Eden. Though she had been just a child then, her entire life had been spent preparing for this moment. "Admiral," she said, her voice crisp and professional. "All fleet commanders report. Ready. The stealth systems are functioning perfectly. Every ship is invisible to current galactic sensor technology." Marcus looked at the display showing the positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. Thousands of dots, each representing a vessel filled with people who had grown up hearing the stories of New Eden. People who had been born into a culture built around one simple promise: never again. Timeline? Marcus asked. 72 hours. 14 minutes, Harrison replied. Simultaneous emergence from stealth across all target systems. Every Kethmaran world will wake up to find human ships in their sky. Marcus thought about Ambassador Zekthul, probably still on the council station, still telling his proud stories about burning human cities. In 3 days, he would learn what those stories had cost his people. What about civilian casualties? Marcus asked. It was a question he asked every day, one that kept him awake at night. Projected to be minimal, sir. Our weapons are precise enough to disable military targets without affecting civilian areas. The Kethmaran will lose their ability to fight, but not their ability to live. That was important. Humanity had learned to be better than their enemies. They could have built weapons to crack planets and burn atmospheres. Instead, they had created tools of surgical precision. They would destroy the Kethmaran military machine completely, but they would not become monsters in the process. Rodriguez pulled up another display. Sir, we're also ready to broadcast the evidence files to every species in the galaxy. Complete documentation of the New Eden genocide, plus records of who knew about it and did nothing. Marcus nodded. The galaxy would learn the truth about what had happened 8 centuries ago. They would see the pictures of burning cities, hear the voices of children calling for help that never came. They would understand exactly why humanity had spent so long preparing for this day. The council station? Marcus asked. Special operations. Team is already in position, Harrison said. Ambassador Zekthul will be taken alive. The galaxy will hear him confess to his crimes. Marcus felt a moment of satisfaction at that thought. The alien who had boasted about genocide would stand trial before the very council that had failed to stop him. Justice delayed was not justice denied, not when the delay made justice absolute. A younger officer approached with another report. Sir, final confirmation from the stealth reconnaissance ships. All target systems are clear. No unexpected defenses, no changes to the intelligence reports. Marcus took a deep breath. 847 years of preparation were about to be tested. Generations of humans had lived and died to make this moment possible. Children had grown up studying Kethmaran language and culture. Scientists had spent their entire careers developing new weapons. Engineers had designed ships specifically for this one purpose. Send the final authorization codes to all fleet commanders, Marcus ordered. Operation New Eden begins in 72 hours. As the commands went out across the solar system, humanity's children prepared to keep the promise their ancestors had made in the ashes of a burning world. The galaxy had ignored their cries for help once. It would not have the chance to ignore them again. The long memory of humanity was about to wake up, and the universe would learn what 8 centuries of patient rage could accomplish. Commander Vextar of the Kethmaran Third Fleet was reviewing routine patrol reports when his universe changed forever. The scaled officer sat in his command chair aboard the battleship Eternal Fang, watching the peaceful stars of the Keth-Ara system on his main display. This was home space, the heart of the Empire. Nothing had threatened these worlds in over 300 years. His sensor officer suddenly stiffened at her station. Commander, I'm reading massive gravitational distortions across the system. Something's wrong with our instruments. Run diagnostics, Vexatar ordered, though he felt a chill of unease. The Kethmoran military prided itself on having the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Their instruments did not malfunction. Sir, diagnostics show everything normal, but I'm reading impossible energy signatures. It's like space itself is rippling. Across the Kethara system, similar scenes played out on 47 Kethmaran worlds. Sensor operators stared at readings that made no sense. Defense commanders tried to understand why their instruments were detecting massive objects that couldn't be seen. Then, all at once, the universe revealed its new truth. 12,000 ships appeared from quantum stealth simultaneously across Kethmoran space. They materialized as if reality itself had decided to unveil them, massive vessels of sleek design. That looked like nothing any alien had ever seen before. They were black as space itself, their hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. Commander Vexistar watched in frozen horror as 300 human ships appeared around his home world. They hung in space like hungry predators, their weapon ports dark, but somehow threatening. Each ship was easily twice the size of his battleship, and they had appeared without triggering a single alarm. "Battle stations!" Vextar roared, but even as the alarm klaxons began to wail, he knew it was already too late. Whatever these ships were, wherever they had come from, they had achieved total surprise against the most powerful military in the galaxy. On the planet below, Supreme Admiral Kraztul of the Kethmoran Navy was in an emergency meeting with the Planetary Defense Council when the report started flooding in. Every world, every fleet, every military installation was reporting the same thing. Unknown ships appearing from nowhere, surrounding their positions with overwhelming force. "How many ships?" Kraztul demanded of his communications officer. "Current count shows 12,400 enemy vessels, sir. They've appeared simultaneously at every major military target in the Empire." Kraztul felt his blood turn cold. The entire Kethmoran Navy numbered only 8,000 ships, and they were scattered across the galaxy on patrol routes and garrison duties. Whoever had planned this attack had somehow deployed nearly 50% more ships than the Empire possessed, and they had done it with perfect coordination. "Who are they?" Kraztul asked. "What species could hide such a massive fleet? Are they Andromedans, Rigelians?" Before anyone could answer, every communication screen in the room activated simultaneously. The image that appeared was of a creature that made several Kethmoran officers hiss in recognition. Bipedal, pink-skinned, with forward-facing eyes, and no visible claws or fangs. It looked soft, harmless, almost pathetic. It looked human. "I am Admiral Marcus Webb of the Human Defense Fleet," the creature said in perfect Kethmoran. "For 847 years, we have waited for this moment. Today, the children of New Eden have come home." Supreme Admiral Kraztul stared at the screen in disbelief. Humans were extinct, wiped out centuries ago. This had to be some kind of trick, a psychological warfare tactic by one of the Empire's enemies. "Impossible," Kraztul whispered. "We killed them all." The human's eyes seemed to look directly at him through the screen. "You killed 12 million of us on New Eden. You thought that was all of us. You were wrong." Across the Kethmoran Empire, every military commander was watching the same broadcast. On 47 worlds, the descendants of those who had celebrated the genocide of New Eden now learned the price of their ancestors' crimes. "You will power down your weapons," Admiral Webb continued. "You will order your ships to full stop. You will prepare to be boarded. Any attempt to resist will be met with immediate and overwhelming force." Commander Vexistar found his voice. "This is impossible. We have the most advanced military in the galaxy. No one could have built such a fleet without our knowledge." As if responding to his words, the human ships around Cathara demonstrated exactly how wrong he was. Invisible fields of gravitational force reached out from the human vessels, gently but irresistibly taking hold of every Kethmoran ship in the system. Vextar watched in helpless rage as his engines shut down without any command from his crew. His weapons powered down automatically. Even his life support systems came under external control, operating normally but no longer responding to his orders. "How?" he whispered. The answer came not from the human admiral, but from his own sensor. "Officer, sir, they're not using energy weapons. They're manipulating gravity itself. They're treating our ships like toys." On every Kethmoran world, The same thing was happening. Defense platforms that had never been defeated simply went dark. Orbital. Weapons that could crack moons became as harmless as sculpture. The most feared military in galactic history had been neutralized without a single shot being fired. Admiral Webb's image appeared on screens throughout the Empire. In military headquarters and civilian centers, in the halls of government and the homes of ordinary citizens, every Kethmaran could see the face of humanity's justice. For New Eden, the human said simply. For the 12 million who called for help while you burned their world. For the children who died crying for mothers who would never come. For all of them, we have returned. The broadcast changed to show images that made grown Kethmaran warriors flinch away from their screens, cities burning under orbital bombardment, families huddled in shelters as death rained from the sky, children's bodies in the rubble of schools and hospitals. These are the images your ancestors celebrated, Admiral Webb said. This is what Ambassador Zekthul calls his greatest achievement. This is what the galaxy allowed to happen while they counted their profits from trade with your empire. Supreme Admiral Krastul tried to rally his forces, but every order he gave was useless. His fleets could not move. His weapons could not fire. His communications were being monitored and controlled by technology that made their most advanced systems look like stone knives. 847 years ago, you taught us that the strong do what they must and the weak suffer what they will, Admiral Webb said. Today, you will learn what it means when the weak refuse to remain weak. Across the galaxy, other species monitored the broadcasts with growing horror. The humans, the extinct humans, had returned with a military force that made every other fleet look like children's toys. They had hidden for 8 centuries, growing strong while the galaxy forgot they existed. On the council station, Ambassador Zekthul watched his empire's humiliation with disbelief turning to rage. "This cannot be happening," he snarled to anyone who would listen. "They are extinct. We made certain." But even as he spoke, human ships were appearing around the council station itself. The neutral ground where he had boasted about genocide was now surrounded by the descendants of his victims. The galaxy was learning a new lesson that day. Some species, when pushed to the edge of extinction, simply died. Others, the dangerous ones, spent centuries growing strong enough to push back. Humanity had chosen to push back, and the universe would never be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had never seen anything like it. Representatives from 200 species crowded into the Great Chamber, their voices creating a chaos of fear and confusion that the translation systems could barely handle. Some demanded action, others wanted to hide. Most simply wanted to understand how humanity had fooled them all for 8 centuries. Chairman Veltar of the Altarian Federation called for order, but his words were lost in the noise. On the massive screens around the chamber, reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy. The entire Kethmaran military had been neutralized in less than 6 hours. Not destroyed, but completely disabled. 12,000 human ships had accomplished what the combined fleets of the galaxy could not have done in years of warfare. Ambassador Zekthul sat in his delegation's seats, his scaled face pale with shock. For the first time in his long life, the Kethmaran diplomat looked like what he truly was, an old reptile whose time had passed. His empire's invincible fleet was now floating helpless in space, their crews waiting to see what humanity would do with them. "Order! Order!" Chairman Veltar finally managed to make himself heard. "We will hear from the human representative." A section of the chamber's floor began to rise, forming a speaking platform. As it reached its full height, a figure materialized on it. The human appeared out of thin air, just as their ships had appeared from stealth. She was tall for her species, with gray hair and dark skin marked by old scars. Her uniform was simple but somehow carried more authority than the elaborate robes worn by galactic royalty. "I am Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the universal translators. "I speak for humanity and for the dead of New Eden." Zekthul tried to stand, but found himself held in place by an invisible force. When he spoke, his voice cracked with age and fear. "You cannot do this. There are laws, treaties. The Council will not allow—" "The Council?" Admiral Chen turned to look at him, and Zekthul fell silent under her gaze. The same council that debated for 3 days while 12 million humans burned? The council that voted 17 times to express concern, but never once to send aid? She gestured, and the chamber's screens changed to show archived council records from 800 years ago. The assembled delegates watched their predecessors argue about jurisdiction and trade implications, while an entire world died. "We listened to every debate," Admiral Chen continued. "We recorded every vote. We noted who spoke for justice and who spoke for profit. We have been very thorough in our record-keeping." Chairman Veltar's tentacles writhed nervously. "Admiral, surely we can discuss this situation like civilized beings. What happened to New Eden was tragic, but that was centuries ago. Those responsible are long dead." Admiral Chen smiled, and somehow that expression was more frightening than any weapon. "Are they? Ambassador Zekthul, please tell the Council about your great-grandfather's war medals, the ones he earned for cleansing operations against human settlements." Zekthul's yellow eyes widened. How could they know about family records that were kept secret even within the Empire? "Or perhaps," Admiral Chen continued, "we should discuss the Centauri trade agreements that were expanded immediately after New Eden's destruction. Funny how profitable it became to do business with the Kethmoran once their pest problem was solved." The Centauri delegation shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Their forearms gestured in patterns that meant distress in their culture. The Rigelian mining consortiums that bid for the rights to strip mine New Eden's ruins before the ashes were even cold. The Andromedan corporations that provided the sensor jamming technology that prevented rescue ships from finding survivors. With each revelation, Admiral Chen turned to face another delegation. Each group she named fell silent as their species' complicity was laid bare before the entire galaxy. 847 years, she said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. 847 years we have watched you. We have seen which species profited from our genocide. We have noted who celebrated our supposed extinction. We have recorded every trade deal, every alliance, every quiet agreement to never speak of what happened at New Eden. The chamber was completely silent now. 200 species, some of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, sat like children being scolded by a disappointed parent. "You want to know what humanity has become during our exile?" Admiral Chen asked. "We have become very good at remembering. We have become excellent at planning, and we have become absolutely committed to the idea that evil should not go unpunished simply because it is old." A new image appeared on the screens. A star map showing human ship positions throughout the galaxy, the dots representing human. Fleets weren't just around Kethmoran worlds. They were positioned near the home systems of dozens of other species. "Every civilization that could have helped but chose not to," Admiral Chen said, "now has human ships 3 hours away from their capitals. Every species that profited from our people's death will have the opportunity to explain their choices." The Andromedan delegate's gaseous form flickered with panic. "You cannot hold us responsible for the actions of our ancestors. We had nothing to do with New Eden. Neither did the children who died there," Admiral Chen replied. "But that didn't save them, did it?" Chairman Veltar tried to regain control of the situation. "What do you want from us? Reparations? Formal apologies? Surely we can reach some kind of agreement." "We want justice," Admiral Chen said simply. "For 8 centuries, this council has represented a galaxy where the strong could commit genocide, while the weak could only watch. Today, that changes. She gestured again, and new images appeared on the screens. Human ships beginning to move toward non-Kethmaran worlds. Not attacking, but taking positions that made their intentions clear. Every species that was complicit in the New Eden genocide will make reparations. Not just money or resources, but changes to ensure such atrocities never happen again. You will create new laws with actual enforcement. You will establish intervention protocols that cannot be delayed by politics or profit. The Altarian chairman's tentacles writhed frantically. And if we refuse? Admiral Chen's smile returned, cold and patient. Then you will learn what happened to the last people who thought humanity was too weak to demand justice. The silence that followed was broken only by the quiet hum of the translation systems. Throughout the chamber, the representatives of galactic civilization realized they were no longer the strongest predators in their neighborhood. Humanity had spent 8 centuries becoming something new, a species that remembered everything, forgave nothing, and had the power to enforce their own vision of justice. "We are not here to conquer," Admiral Chen said, her voice softer now but no less frightening. "We are here to balance the scales. New Eden's dead will be answered for, one way or another. The choice of how that happens is yours." As she spoke, reports continued to come in from across the galaxy. Human fleets moving into position around every world whose governments had failed the test of 8 centuries ago. The descendants of New Eden's survivors were keeping their promise to the dead, and the galaxy was finally learning the price of looking away from genocide. The age of consequences had begun. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the human flagship Remembrance, watching the last Kethmaran fleet gather around their homeworld like wounded animals seeking shelter. Below them, the planet that had spawned 8 centuries of nightmares spun slowly in the darkness of space. 3 billion Kethmoran civilians lived on that world, going about their daily lives while human ships decided their fate. "Sir," Captain Rodriguez reported from her station, "all Kethmaran military assets have been neutralized. Their government is requesting terms for surrender." Marcus nodded but didn't take his eyes off the planet. Somewhere down there in the halls of the Kethmaran High Command, the descendants of New Eden's killers were learning what it felt like to be helpless. The irony was not lost on him. "What's the status of the civilian populations?" Marcus asked. "All major cities are functioning. Normally, sir, our intervention has been surgical. Military targets only. No civilian casualties reported." That had been the hardest part of the plan. Humanity could have built weapons to crack worlds and boil atmospheres. They could have turned the Kethmoran Empire into radioactive dust in a matter of hours. Instead, they had chosen precision over power, justice over vengeance. "Admiral," Communications Officer Park spoke up, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's Supreme Commander Krazatul himself." Marcus turned to face the main screen as the image of the old Kethmaran appeared. The alien leader looked ancient, his scales dulled with age and stress. His yellow eyes held the weight of a species that had just learned they were no longer the apex predators of the galaxy. "Human Admiral," Krazatul said, his voice carrying the formal tones of military protocol, "I am authorized by the Kethmoran High Council to discuss terms of surrender." Marcus studied the face of his enemy's descendant. Krazatul had been barely hatched when New Eden burned, but he carried the genetic memory of his species' triumph. Now he was learning that some victories carried prices that took centuries to come due. "Supreme Commander," Marcus replied, "you are not in a position to negotiate terms. You are here to receive them." Krazatul's throat sacs inflated with what Marcus recognized as fear response among his species. "What do you want from us? What are your demands?" Marcus gestured, and the screens around the Kethmoran commander filled with images from New Eden. Burning cities, mass graves, children's Bodies in the rubble, 800 years old, but preserved in perfect digital clarity. "I want you to watch," Marcus said simply. "I want you to see what your ancestors did. I want you to understand why we have spent 8 centuries preparing for this moment." For 10 minutes, Krastul was forced to watch the genocide his people had committed. Marcus had seen these images thousands of times during his military training, but he watched again. Every human did. They never allowed themselves to forget. When the footage ended, Krastul looked physically ill. His scales had shifted to the pale green that indicated nausea among his kind. "Now," Marcus said, "you will listen to our terms." The conditions were simple but absolute. The Kethmoran Empire would be dissolved. Their military would be disbanded, their weapons destroyed. Their territory would be divided among the species they had conquered over the millennia, with humanity overseeing the transition. "And what of our people?" Krastul asked. "What becomes of the Kethmoran race?" Marcus had spent months considering this question. It would have been easy to answer with extinction, eye for an eye, genocide for genocide. His people would have cheered such justice. But that was not who humanity had chosen to become. "Your species will survive," Marcus said. "You will be relocated to the outer rim systems far from the civilized galaxy. You will be given the tools to build a new society, one that does not require the suffering of others to prosper. Your children will learn a different way to live." Krastul's relief was visible, but Marcus was not finished. "However," he continued, "every Kethmoran who was alive during the New Eden genocide, everyone who participated or knew of it and did nothing, will stand trial before a tribunal of the species they have wronged. Justice delayed is not justice denied." The old commander nodded slowly. He had expected death for his entire species. Exile was mercy, even if it came with the price of accountability. "There is one more thing," Marcus said. "Ambassador Zekthul has spent his career boasting about the genocide of my people. He will confess his crimes before the Galactic Council. The galaxy will hear the truth from his own mouth." On the council station, Zekthul sat in a holding cell that was more luxurious than most beings' homes, but was still undeniably a prison. Human guards stood outside, their faces hidden behind helmet visors that made them look like death itself. The door opened, and Admiral Chen entered. She moved like a predator, all controlled violence and patience. Zekthul had spent his life around dangerous beings, but none had ever made him feel as small as this human female did. "Ambassador," she said, taking a seat across from him, "in 1 hour you will address the Galactic Council. You will confess to the crimes committed at New Eden. You will name every participant, every official who knew and approved, every species that aided the genocide through action or inaction." Zekthul tried to summon his old arrogance. "And if I refuse?" Admiral Chen placed a small device on the table between them. It projected a holographic image of Zekthul's family compound on the Kethmoran homeworld. His children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren were visible going about, their daily routines. "Your bloodline includes 43 individuals across 4 generations," Admiral Chen said calmly. 14 of them are old enough to stand trial for war crimes. The others are children who have done nothing wrong. Zekthul felt ice form in his stomach. "You would not harm innocents. Your people do not kill children." "No," Admiral Chen agreed. "We do not. But we do hold people accountable for their choices. Your confession will be complete and honest, or those 14 members of your family will join you in the dock for trial. The choice is yours." An hour later, the Galactic Council watched in stunned silence as Ambassador Zekthul confessed to crimes that some species had convinced themselves were myths. He named names, revealed documents, and described in detail how the genocide had been planned and executed. With each word, The last defenses of willful ignorance crumbled. When he finished, Admiral Chen stood to address the council one final time. "The age of pretending evil does not exist because it is convenient has ended," she said. "Humanity has returned to the galaxy not as conquerors, but as conscience. We will be watching, we will be remembering, and we will ensure that no species ever again faces extinction while the galaxy counts its profits." She paused, looking around the chamber at the faces of beings who would reshape their civilizations rather than face humanity's justice. "New Eden's children have grown up," she said. "We have learned patience, precision, and the value of proportional response. But we have also learned that some debts can only be paid in full, and some promises can never be broken." As the human fleets began their long journey home, the galaxy started the difficult work of building a better version of itself. New laws were written with enforcement mechanisms that could not be delayed by politics. Intervention protocols were established that prioritized lives over profits. The Keth Moran Empire became a cautionary tale told to children about the price of unchecked cruelty. Humanity took their place not as rulers of the galaxy, but as its guardians. They established listening posts throughout known space, watching for signs of genocide, slavery, or systematic oppression. When such signs appeared, human ships would follow, carrying the promise that evil would not go unanswered. The children of New Eden had kept their oath to the dead. They had become strong enough to ensure that no species would ever again face extinction while the galaxy looked away. In learning to balance justice with mercy, humanity had become something the universe had never seen before, a civilization that grew more dangerous the more moral it became. The galaxy had learned to shudder when humans came to end a grudge, but it had also learned to hope when humans came to prevent the next one from beginning.